to another Take 5.
The Apostle Paul says, get all of the yeast out. And so this bread has no yeast. It was on the table when Jesus met with his disciples. 3 pieces of matzah, bread of affliction.
I'm sure most of us at one time or another have struggled to stay awake during church. One of my favorite stories in the book of Acts comes from Acts chapter 20. And this is what we read there. On the first day of the week, we came together to break bread. Paul spoke to the people, and because he intended to leave the next day, he kept on talking until midnight. There were many lamps in the upper room where we were meeting. Seated in a window was a young man named Eutychus, who was sinking into a deep sleep as Paul talked on and on. When he was sound asleep, he fell to the ground from the 3rd story and was picked up dead. Paul went down, threw himself on the young man, and put his arms around him. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "He's alive." Then he went upstairs again and broke bread and ate. After talking until daylight, he left, and the people took the young man home alive and were greatly comforted. There are times when you and I can fall asleep spiritually. Sometimes it is because of fatigue. Perhaps we've invested our lives in so many other things that when it comes time for the spiritual, we have no energy left. Sometimes it is because we are so comfortable in our spiritual routines and the things that we do as Christians that we really can be lulled into a deep sleep, a state of spiritual sleep. Sometimes life turns up the heat, and heat always seems to make us fall asleep. For this young man Eutychus, they were in an upper room. It was very warm up there, I'm sure. He was seated in a 3rd story window, probably trying to be cool. There were many lamps in the room. And so it didn't take long for Eutychus to drift into a deep sleep. You and I, if we're not careful, we can drift into a spiritual sleep, and before we know it, we've fallen. At the end of this account, Paul goes down, wraps his arms around Eutychus, picks him up, and presents him back to the people alive. We serve a God who wants us to have a rich, wonderful spiritual life. His desire is not for you and I to fall asleep spiritually, and he certainly doesn't want us to die spiritually. And so if we'll be intentional about it, we can be spiritually alert and awake. And so here's my challenge for you today. If you're asleep, wake up! And if you're starting to doze off, get up, move around, exercise. Not just physically, but spiritually. Be in His Word. Spend time in prayer. Use the spiritual gifts that He's given you. Go out into the world and be a servant. Allow Him to use you to touch the lives of others, and you will find your relationship with Christ fresh, invigorated, exciting, awake, and alert. I get it. Being a Christian at times can be exhausting, dealing with all of the struggles and challenges and temptations that we deal with as Christians. But I also know this. A relationship with Jesus Christ that is healthy and growing is also the most exciting, rewarding, and fulfilling undertaking you and I can ever have. And so being awake and alert, ready to be used by God, embracing our relationship with Jesus Christ, no chance I'm falling asleep, and I hope you won't either.